Keeping with the tradition of regular high-level exchanges between India and Bhutan and neighbourhood first policy, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi departs on a two-day state visit to Bhutan. India launches Operation Indravati to evacuate its nationals from violence hit Haiti. 12 Indians evacuated so far. India's Enforcement Directorate arrests Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in the excise policy case. UN Security Council to vote on Friday on US-backed resolution urging immediate ceasefire in Gaza and an Israel-Hamas hostage deal. US surgeons achieve a major milestone, transplant pig kidney into human in a 4-hour surgery. Pig was genetically edited to remove genes harmful to human recipient. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has embarked on a visit to Bhutan today, and during the visit, Prime Minister will meet the King of Bhutan and also the fourth King of Bhutan. Prime Minister will also hold talks with the Prime Minister of Bhutan, Shering Topke. The visit will provide an opportunity for both sides to exchange views on bilateral and regional matters of interest and deliberate on ways to expand and intensify exemplary partnership for the benefit of peoples. Committed to the security and well-being of Indians living abroad, India begins Operation Indravati to evacuate its nationals from violence-affected Haiti. So far, 12 Indians have been evacuated from Haiti to the Dominican Republic. Taking to his official Twitter handle, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said, India begins Operation Indravati to evacuate its nationals from Haiti to the Dominican Republic. 12 Indians evacuated, fully committed to the security and well-being of our nationals abroad. Thank the government of the Dominican Republic for their support. Amid violence and looting in the Caribbean nation, earlier a control room and an emergency helpline number were opened to evacuate distressed Indian nationals from Haiti. Haiti has been under a state of emergency after some armed groups attacked the country's largest prison earlier this month, killing and injuring police and prison staff and enabling some 3,500 inmates to escape. The ongoing chaos has forced tens of thousands to flee their homes, adding to more than 300,000 already displaced by gang violence. Latest on Haiti violence, another gang leader shot dead in an apparent resurgence of a vigilante justice movement. Attacks flared in Haiti's capital Port-au-Prince on Thursday as political groups appear to get nearer to finalizing a transition council set to take over from an absent government. The United States will submit a draft resolution urging an immediate ceasefire linked to the release of hostages held by Hamas. Nate Evans, spokesperson for the U.S. mission to the United Nations, said on Thursday that the resolution resulted from many rounds of consultations with members of the 15-seat Security Council. To pass in the Security Council, a resolution needs at least 9 votes in favor and no veto by the U.S., France, Britain, Russia or China. The resolution marks a further toughening of Washington's stance towards Israel. Earlier in the 5-month-long conflict, the U.S. was averse to the word ceasefire and vetoed measures that included calls for an immediate ceasefire. The French ambassador to the United Nations on Thursday urged the Security Council to get a ceasefire in Gaza before the end of the week. The French diplomat said the ceasefire needs to be in place for Ramadan, noting the second week of the Muslim fasting festivity is close to ending.
We need a ceasefire for Ramadan, and we are basically almost at the end of the second week of Ramadan. France, of course, wants this ceasefire. We want all the hostages to be released. No need to repeat to you that we have been condemning again and again the attack by Hamas on October 7, but now it's time to save lives.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Thursday the gaps are narrowing in talks in Doha toward an agreement on the release of hostages and a ceasefire in Israel's conflict with Hamas in Gaza.
There's a clear consensus around a number of shared priorities. First, the need for an immediate, sustained ceasefire with the release of hostages. That would create space to surge more humanitarian assistance to relieve the suffering of many people and to build something more enduring. We've been working, as you know, with Egypt, with Qatar, and with Israel to put a strong proposal on the table. Hamas responded to that. The negotiators continue to work. The gaps are narrowing, and we're continuing to push for an agreement in Doha. There's still difficult work to get there, but I continue to believe it's possible.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will travel to Israel on Friday as part of his 6th urgent mission to West Asia. During his visit, Blinken will hold talks with the Israeli government leadership. Ahead of visiting Israel, Blinken said a major ground operation in Rafah would be a mistake and something the U.S. would not support.
On Rafah, again, we've been very clear, President Biden's been very clear that a major ground operation in Rafah would be a mistake and something that we can't support. There is no place for the many civilians who are massed in Gaza, in Rafah, to go to get out of harm's way. And for those that would inevitably remain, it would be a humanitarian disaster.
World Central Kitchen on Thursday released photographs showing the food aid charity's Palestinian staff preparing meals for residents in war-ravaged Gaza. World Central Kitchen partnered with Spanish charity Open Arms to deliver up to 200 tons of food aid to Gaza via a vessel that departed Cyprus on March 12 and are determined to keep us deliveries using most funding from the United Arab Emirates. Founder Jose Andres claimed via a social media post that the food aid organization had already reached 40 million meals in Gaza with 67 kitchens and 3,000 Palestinian team members. He added that they are sending food to the north. Israelis gathered along Jerusalem's western wall on Thursday to pray for the release of hostages held in Gaza ahead of Jewish holiday of Purim. The event is described a simple act of unity to give a lot of strength to those who need the most. More than 130 hostages remain in Gaza, most believed to be in Hamas hands, after more than 100 were released during a short-lived truce in late November.
That our prayer goes straight to our kids, sisters, brothers that have been already 167 days hostages. We're full of hope. We believe that our government, our army, the IDF will bring them as soon as possible to their home, to their families.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is due to meet Israeli leaders on Friday to discuss ongoing efforts to come to a ceasefire agreement for the release of hostages as well as long-term post-conflict planning. Earlier in the week, he met regional leaders in Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Caroline Malone reports from Washington.
The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the gap is narrowing between Israel and Hamas on reaching an agreement that could at the very least see a ceasefire and hostages released. But part of the sticking points remain on the timeline. Hamas wants a complete end to the Israeli assault on Gaza in exchange for hostages. Israel wants only a temporary truce. It's always said that it aims to completely wipe out Hamas. Well, senior negotiators, including those from the US, Egypt and Qatar, are meeting in Doha on Friday to push forward for an agreement and also to discuss a post-conflict plan for Gaza, which Arab leaders have said must include a Palestinian state. But according to the Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, there is still difficult work that needs to be done. Well, the US has expressed a concern about the humanitarian situation for people living in Gaza, and Blinken has said that children should not be dying of malnutrition, and that Israel needs to do more to speed aid into the embattled territory. And that is really reflecting an increasingly heard world view, and also one heard in Washington and the wider US. Fewer people here now, only about a third, think that Israel's response is appropriate. That's way down from a few months ago when Israel had widespread support in the US in its campaign against Hamas in response to the October attack. Well, the US has put forward a resolution at the United Nations Security Council calling for a ceasefire and for the release of hostages. And that's due to be discussed and voted on Friday morning at the UN headquarters. Caroline Malone in Washington for DD India.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. EU leaders call for immediate humanitarian pause in Gaza. Bolivia's conservation program identifies at least 16 Andean bears. Stay with us for more. Visitors welcome spring equinox. We give you more details about this astronomical event. Stay tuned.
In today's episode, let's try to understand what does it mean to truly celebrate all women. Let's uncover the layers of their struggles in different walks of life.
My biggest motivation was to save the environmental waste that I was creating, to reduce the carbon footprint, waste footprint. And when we talk about menstrual waste or periods as a topic, I think this fits in very well with the intersection of social and environmental issues.
The weather in Meghalaya definitely one of the center points of how we design these systems. And then sort of maybe just take the the region in the state and try and design a system that is designed to work in that situation.
We address financial education topics, from making a family budget to creating a small business plan for micro-enterprises. Topics also include health and wellness for women.
Global temperatures have changed these days. That too, it doesn't rain where it needs to rain. And in this situation, the only crop that survives is millet.
How does the world's largest democracy hold the world's biggest election? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture. Every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
You said that Indian ethos and conceptualization of society, nation, state, governance, all these fundamental concepts of public life. You said that they are distinct and they are quite different and drawn from our traditions.
Our rise should be not just a photocopy of a Western or European nation, but India should rise as its own real identity, which we call it Bharat.
Jaipur.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. European Union leaders called on Thursday for an immediate humanitarian pause in Gaza that would lead to a ceasefire. Strong and unified statement of EU leaders on Middle East at #UCO Charles Michel, the President of the Council, posted on social media platform X. The EU calls for an immediate humanitarian pause leading to a sustainable ceasefire. Concerning Gaza, EU leaders called for an immediate humanitarian pause that would lead to a ceasefire.
Consensus of tonight is that we need an immediate humanitarian pause leading to a sustained ceasefire, the unconditional release of hostages, and the provision of humanitarian assistance. Gaza is on the verge of famine, a catastrophic humanitarian situation. Full, rapid, safe and unhindered humanitarian access into Gaza via all routes is essential.
The European Union could use proceeds from frozen Russian assets to help Ukraine within a few months under a plan that includes buying arms for Kyiv, EU leaders said on Thursday. Leaders of the bloc's 27 member countries agreed at a summit in Brussels to move ahead with work on the plan presented this week by the EU's executive body, the European Commission. The Commission has proposed transferring 90% of profits from the frozen Russian assets to an EU-run fund used to finance arms for Kyiv. The other 10% would go to budget aid for Kyiv. The Commission estimated the profits on the assets, various Russian central bank securities and cash could be between 2.5 billion euros and 3 billion euros per year. The idea of using the proceeds of frozen Russian assets to benefit Ukraine has broad support among EU governments, Michel and von der Leyen said.
We are determined to act very quickly so that we can take a part of this money to support Ukraine, including this possibility with military equipment. And it shows that the 27 leaders around the table understand the seriousness of the situation. It shows that we are determined to bring more support for Ukraine.
Prepared a proposal to increase tariffs on Russian and Belarusian imports of cereals, oilseeds and derived products. And there are several good reasons for making this proposal. It will prevent Russian grain from destabilizing the EU market in these products.
Russia began the mass production of Fab 3000 high-explosive aerial bombs from February of this year, the Russian Defense Ministry said on Thursday. The Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu inspected a defense industrial plant in Nizhny Novgorod region, which manufactures Fab 3000 bombs and other types of ammunition, including artillery rounds. Shoigu said that the output of ammunition for artillery increased almost 22 times. This ensured delivery of sufficient amount of projectiles to the zone of special military operation in Ukraine, he added.
The new production facilities have been built and have started to work at their full capacity. Moreover, 75% of the components are being restored, which allows us to maintain the delivery of ammunition to the zone of the special military operation in Ukraine at a sufficient level.
NATO Military Committee Chief Rob Boyer said during a visit to Kyiv on Thursday that Ukraine's allies should not be too pessimistic about its ability to repel Russian troops and called for important aid packages to be delivered quickly. Boyer led the first official visit to Kyiv, where he also met President Volodymyr Zelensky by a NATO military delegation since February 2022, when Russia sent thousands of troops to Ukraine in a multi-pronged invasion. Kyiv's troops are facing shortages of ammunition, cells and manpower and are on the back foot in the east, while Russian forces are inching forward. Boyer also met Ukraine's army chief Alexander Syrsky for talks on the current combat situation. Syrsky said on Facebook that ammunition supplies and air defenses were discussed. The International Monetary Fund's executive body on Thursday approved a third review of Ukraine's $15.6 billion loan program, allowing the release of $880 million for budget support and bringing total disbursement to $5.4 billion. The global lender said the risks facing Ukraine remained exceptionally high, particularly the uncertainties surrounding the war with Russia and prospects for external financing. Although Ukraine Mission Chief Gavin Gray said the fund still expected the war in Ukraine to wind down by end of 2024. Boosting defence interoperability and military exercises with the United States, Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles and Foreign Minister Penny Wong toured the Osborne Naval Shipyard in Australia after they signed a new defence and security agreement the day before. Under the agreement, a security pact between Australia, Britain and the United States launched in 2021. Australia also named BAE, Britain's biggest defence company, to build nuclear submarines in partnership with Australia-based naval firm.
That's a reasonably deep river.
And marking a major milestone in the quest to provide more readily available organs to patients, a 62-year man with end-stage renal disease has become the first human to receive a new kidney from genetically modified pig. In a 4-hour surgery performed on March 16, doctors from Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston announced it's a major breakthrough that could benefit countless patients on dialysis on transplant waiting lists. As per the hospital, the patient is recovering well and expected to be discharged soon. The kidney was provided by eGenesis of Cambridge, Massachusetts, from a pig that had been genetically edited to remove genes that could be harmful to the human recipient and add certain human genes also to improve compatibility. The company also inactivated certain viruses inherent to pigs that have the potential to infect humans. On a starry night, just 3 meters under the surface of the sea off the coast of Thailand, scuba divers watch as billions of pink specks rise from the ocean floors. Thai scientists working to restore the country's coral reefs, which are eroding due to rising seawater temperatures brought on by climate change. Thailand's Department of Marine and Coastal Resources estimates as much as 90% of Thailand's coral reefs have been affected by a mass bleaching event that started in 2010, triggered by warmer water temperatures. A United Nations report has found that the world is set to produce a staggering 82 million tons of waste made up of old mobile phones and other devices by 2030. A UN expert said that world is losing the battle against electronic waste. The generation of e-waste is rising by 2.6 million tons annually. In 2022, the world's annual output of e-waste stood at 62 million tons, which marked an 82% increase from 2010. E-waste can contain toxic additives and hazardous substances, which can represent an environmental and health hazard. Well, the International Monetary Fund announced an agreement with Sri Lanka regarding the country's second review of its economic reform program. The program, bolstered by a 4-year extended fund facility arrangement, garnered approval from IMF Executive Board in March 2023, securing a substantial sum of approximately $3 billion. Pending approval from IMF Management and Executive Board, this agreement hinges on successful implementation of prior actions and progress in financing assurances review. If ratified, Sri Lanka stands to gain access to approximately $337 million, supplementing the existing financial support of $1 billion under the agreement and arrangement. The United Nations Development Programme in Sri Lanka has uncovered a troubling reality of multidimensional vulnerability in the northern and eastern regions of the island. However, recent collaborations between Sri Lanka and India offer a glimmer of hope. Discussions between Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi have led to a joint vision document focusing on transforming Tricomle into a hub for industry, energy and economic activities. These ambitious plans hold the potential to uplift communities by generating employment and improving living standards. In addition, High Commissioner of India Santosh Jha and Sri Lanka's Secretary in the Ministry of Urban Development and Housing W.S. Satyananda signed and exchanged diplomatic letters to formalize Government of India's decision to provide an additional grant of approx $493 million for the construction of houses and infrastructure facilities in Anuradhapura. Well, let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Highly contaminated Las Vacas River in Guatemala becomes a prime concern as its high percentage of contamination has become health and environment risk. According to data from Las Vacas Hydroelectric, the river is contaminated with 60% of Guatemala City's sewage and rubbish. The river converges with the Motagua River, which then flows into the Atlantic Ocean. According to the organization, the ocean cleanup, 2% of the plastic emissions that reach the world's oceans comes from the Motagua River due to the pollution coming from Guatemala. Bolivia's conservation program identifies at least 60 Andean bears in areas where they had not been spotted before. The conservationists are hoping for the species conservation as it is considered as a vulnerable species to extinction. Since 2017, the Chester Zoo's Andean Carnivore Conservation Program initiative has installed trap cameras in the Tahira Department forest areas and in 2023 sighted various members of the thriving bear community playing or walking among the trees. Visitors welcomed the spring equinox on Thursday with the arms up ritual at the Mexican Pyramid of Sun. This astronomical event takes place twice a year when the sun crosses the celestial equator, resulting in days and nights of equal length. In March, it marks the start of the spring in northern hemisphere and autumn in the southern one. And still to come on DD India News Hour. National Internet Exchange of India launches Bhasha Net Portal on Universal Acceptance Day. Indian Army's Northern Command honors its distinguished soldiers. Stay with us for the details.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibilities. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday 8 p.m. only on DD India.
How does the world's largest democracy hold the world's biggest election? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture. Every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India. In today's episode, let's try to understand what does it mean to truly celebrate all women. Let's uncover the layers of their struggles in different walks of life.
My biggest motivation was to save the environmental waste that I was creating, to reduce the carbon footprint, waste footprint. And when we talk about menstrual waste or periods as a topic, I think this fits in very well with the intersection of social and environmental issues.
The weather in Meghalaya, definitely one of the center points of how we design these systems. And then sort of maybe just take the worse the region in the state and try and design a system that is designed to work in that situation.
We address financial education topics, from making a family budget to creating a small business plan for micro-enterprises. Topics also include health and wellness for women.
Global temperatures have changed these days. That too, it doesn't rain where it needs to rain. And in this situation, the only crop that survives is millet.
You're watching DD India News On. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj, and let's have a look at the headlines once again. Keeping with the tradition of regular high-level exchanges between India and Bhutan and neighbourhood first policy, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi departs on a 2-day state visit to Bhutan. India launches Operation Indravati to evacuate its nationals from violence-hit Haiti. 12 Indians evacuated so far. India's Enforcement Directorate arrests Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in the excise policy case. UN Security Council to vote on Friday on US-backed resolution urging immediate ceasefire in Gaza and an Israel-Hamas hostage deal. US surgeons achieve a major milestone: transplant pig kidney into human in a 4-hour surgery. Pig was genetically edited to remove genes harmful to human recipient. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Bhutan on a 2-day visit. In a social media post, PM Modi said, and I quote, "On the way to Bhutan, where I will be attending various programs aimed at further cementing the India-Bhutan partnership. I look forward to the talks with the Majesty, the King of Bhutan, His Majesty, the 4th Druk Gyalpo, and Prime Minister Shering Topge." India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi embarked on a 2-day Bhutan visit. Getting more on this, see DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh's report from Bhutan.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi shall be arriving here in Bhutan on Friday for a 2-day state visit to the Himalayan kingdom. During his visit, the Prime Minister shall be calling on the King of Bhutan, Jigme Khesar Namgyal Wangchuk. Later, he shall also be meeting the King's father and former King Jigme Singye Wangchuk. He will hold discussions with his Bhutanese counterpart, Shering Topge, who concluded a 5-day visit to India a few days back. During this visit, the Prime Minister shall be receiving Bhutan's highest civilian honour, the Order of the Druk Gyalpo, which the royal government of Bhutan had announced in 2021. On Saturday, the Prime Minister shall be inaugurating an India-funded, state-of-the-art 150-bed mother and child hospital. This visit of Prime Minister Modi comes in part as part of the tradition of regular high-level exchanges between the two countries, as also the Modi government's policy of neighbourhood first. With cameraman YK Loknath, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in Thimphu.
India's Economic Intelligence Agency, the Enforcement Directorate, on Thursday arrested the Chief Minister of Delhi, Arvind Kejriwal, in connection with graft allegations related to Delhi excise policy case. The agency is investigating allegations that a liquor policy implemented by the Delhi government in 2022 gave undue advantages to private retailers. The Enforcement Directorate, which is investigating the money laundering angle in the case, has so far issued 9 summons to Arvind Kejriwal for questioning. The Delhi Chief Minister has moved the Supreme Court, seeking an urgent hearing after the Delhi High Court refused to grant him interim protection on Thursday.
हमारी जो लड़ाई है वो सड़क से लेके न्यायालय तक चलेगी। हमने सुप्रीम कोर्ट में अरविंद केजरीवाल जी के गैर कानूनी गिरफ्तारी के खिलाफ उस गैर कानूनी गिरफ्तारी को क्वॉश करने के लिए एप्लीकेशन डाल दी है। सुबह सुबह सुप्रीम कोर्ट में इसको मेंशन किया जाएगा।
Bharatiya Janata Party termed the arrest of Arvind Kejriwal as the victory of truth.
2020-21 से लगातार शराब नीति घोटाले में अरविंद केजरीवाल बहानेबाजी कर रहे थे और जिस तरह की राजनीतिक नौटंकी वो कर रहे थे, आज उसका पटाक्षेप हो गया। झूठ और लूट की सरकार जिसका पाप का घड़ा भर चुका था, आज अंततः सत्य की जीत हुई। और मेरा ये मानना है कि पूरे युवा वर्ग को शराब के नशे में धकेलने की जो साजिश अरविंद केजरीवाल और उनकी सरकार ने रची थी, उसका परिणाम ये होना ही था। सत्य की जीत होनी थी और अरविंद केजरीवाल को उनके पापों की सजा मिलनी ही थी।
जश्न भ्रष्टाचार बनाने की कोशिश आम आदमी पार्टी के नेता और आम आदमी पार्टी के कुछ मंत्री कर रहे हैं। ये कोई पहला केस नहीं है। बोए पेड़ बबूल का तो आम कहां से खाए, करे घोटाला शराब का तो आराम कहां से पाए। हर व्यक्ति जानता है कि प्रश्न कोई आज से पूछा नहीं जा रहा है। विगत 3 वर्षों से अरविंद केजरीवाल जी से आम आदमी पार्टी से सवाल पूछे जा रहे हैं।
All right, and DD India correspondent Vikas Sathi joins us with more details. Vikas, yesterday in the evening, Arvind Kejriwal was arrested by the Enforcement Directorate from his residence in Delhi excise policy case, hours after the Delhi High Court refused interim relief to him. Apparently, he was issued 9 summonses by the ED. What's the update you have for us, Vikas?
Right, Siddharth. So he already skipped 9 summons from the Enforcement Directorate, and in fact, he tried all his legal options. We saw him approaching the lower court, Rouse Avenue Court, then again at the Sessions Court, he filed a petition against those summons, and finally he approached Delhi High Court. Not only yesterday, but a day before yesterday also, he approached Delhi High Court and he sought a stay on these summons, but High Court denied his demand. Later on, yesterday also, he approached the same court, and again he said that he needs a certain kind of assurance from the court that he will not be arrested by the ED during the interrogation. And we saw that High Court again denied that relief. Later in the day, ED team reached at his residence, and after an interrogation of almost 2 hours, ED arrested him formally. What we expect today, he will be taken for a medical examination as the procedure demands, and later in the day, he will be produced before the Rouse Avenue Court. There is a special Prevention of Money Laundering Act court which has these kind of cases. He will be produced before PMLA court, and ED will certainly seek his custody for as many days as possible, since Kejriwal has been avoiding those summons for quite some time. Earlier also, when the first summon came was sent to him, he said that he is busy with some political programs. Later we saw that he made an excuse that he has to attend the ongoing budget session of the Legislative Assembly. So on different reasons, on different grounds, he skipped all 9 summons which were issued by the Enforcement Directorate earlier, but at last the investigating agency arrested him yesterday. Siddharth.
Vikas, Arvind Kejriwal also termed these summons as politically motivated and illegal. Can you tell us, Vikas, about the entire matter in detail? Well, 2 Aam Aadmi Party leaders are behind the bars in the same case. Manish Sisodia is one of them. Also, BRS leader K. Kavita, who perhaps is in ED custody, and Satyendra Jain also.
Exactly, Siddharth. In fact, if you saw the timeline, once the ED arrested K. Kavita, then the news on Kejriwal get tightened. In fact, now ED says that K. Kavita and Arvind Kejriwal are also one of the main conspirators. Earlier, we saw that agency was of the view that Manish Sisodia framed this excise policy, where most important issue was that the margin of profit for the private liquor companies was increased from 7 to 12%, and ED said that whatever profits these companies gained, these were sent back as kickbacks to the Aam Aadmi Party, which used those funds for Goa elections, for an state election. That was the main allegation of the Enforcement Directorate. So now we see that some prominent leaders are already in ED custody, in judicial custody, who were arrested by ED earlier. You just mentioned that the ex-deputy minister of Delhi has already been under judicial custody in the same case. Another member of parliament of Aam Aadmi Party, Sanjay Singh, who is a member of the upper house, Rajya Sabha, he was also arrested. Satyendra Jain, who was the health minister of Delhi government, he was also accused of hatching this conspiracy along with other Aam Aadmi Party leaders. He is already in jail for some other scam. And now the BRS leader K. Kavita, who has been recently arrested by the enforcement director, she is also in judicial custody. So that today two important petitions are expected to be taken up by the Supreme Court. One is filed by the BRS leader K. Kavita, where she has challenged her arrest by the enforcement directorate. And yesterday we saw that legal team of Arvind Kejriwal approached the Supreme Court. They sought an urgent hearing in the night itself, but CJI conveyed to his legal team through registry that it is not possible to hold an urgent hearing at this point in time. So we expect in the morning around 10:30 a.m. His counsel will mention his petition before the Chief Justice of India, and a similar petition is already pending before the Supreme Court, which was filed by K. Kavita. So there is a likelihood that both these petitions may be taken up together by the Supreme Court, but whether they will get any kind of relief, it is hard to say. We will have to wait for that, Siddharth.
All right, we'll leave there. Thank you so much, Vikas, for joining in and for your analysis. Well, the National Internet Exchange of India launched the Bhasha Net portal on Universal Acceptance Day on Thursday in New Delhi. The theme of the event was Bhasha Net Impetus Towards Universal Acceptance, which highlights NIXI's dedication to ensure people's full participation in digital world, regardless of language or script.
And now I'll please...
Through Universal Acceptance Day, the National Internet Exchange of India and the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology aims to mobilize stakeholders and raise awareness about the importance of universal acceptance readiness in today's digital landscape. The event featured sessions on the significance of universal acceptance and steps needed to achieve widespread acceptance.
We are talking about ensuring that everybody becomes part of technology. And technology essentially should not be alienating. It should not be that access to technology and digital technology is becoming all-pervasive, is something which is being used in every walk of life. A country like India, where today we have more than 800 million internet users, it becomes very important that all of them are able to use this, and this number is only going to grow. I mean, it's not going to shrink, it's going to grow at least in the next few decades. And therefore, all of them need to have the comfort that they are on equal footing when they are using the internet, when they are using digital modes of communication.
India's Ministry of Information and Broadcasting has cautioned social media influencers against endorsing offshore online betting and gambling platforms. The ministry said that online gambling has significant financial and socio-economic implications. Social media intermediaries have been advised to conduct sensitization efforts among users. The ministry further stated that the failure to comply may lead to a removal of social media posts and accounts. Committed towards a regional cooperation, maritime security, enhanced interoperability and safe seas, INS Tir entered Port Zanzibar of Tanzania, launching the harbour phase of the second edition of India-Mozambique-Tanzania trilateral exercise. INS Sujata headed to Port Maputo in Mozambique as part of the same exercise. The first edition of IMT trilateral exercise, conducted in October 22nd, saw participation of INS Tarkash with the Tanzanian and Mozambique navies. During the harbour stay, Indian naval ships would be open for visitors and partake in sports and cultural exchanges with host navies. Training visits for sea trainees of 106 Integrated Officers Training Course are also planned at the respective ports. The Indian Space Research Organisation ISRO has achieved a milestone in area of reusable launch vehicle RLV technology. ISRO successfully carried out the landing mission of its reusable launch vehicle named Pushpak. The winged vehicle called Pushpak was lifted by an Indian Air Force Chinook helicopter and was released from 4.5 kilometers altitude. After release at a distance of 4 kilometers from runway, the Pushpak autonomously approached the runway along with cross-range corrections. It landed precisely on runway. The mission successfully simulated the approach and high-speed landing conditions of RLV returning from space. The Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir is seeing a tourism revival after Article 370 was abrogated in 2019 by the central government under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership. To further promote tourism, Aquacycle was introduced in Dal Lake in Srinagar to provide tourists and locals with a unique and exciting way to see Dal Lake. Government's efforts to develop Kashmir have not only made the valley an investment destination but also a paradise for sports and adventure enthusiasts. All right, let's get you the latest on what's happening in India in the run-up to the world's largest democratic election. Holding elections in a country as vast and diverse as India is a Herculean task. Here's a report that takes you through the challenges and the arrangements deployed to conduct polling in India in a seamless manner.
This is India, the largest democracy in the world with a population of over 1.3 billion and spread over an area of 3.287 million square kilometers. But to keep the democracy up and running, a nation needs to have an elaborate democratic process or an election system. And to conduct election that has all the elements of freedom and fairness, an elaborate and institutionalized security mechanism is imperative. When it comes to security, comprehensive set of measures are taken by the Election Commission of India, the apex electoral authority, to make sure the electoral process is smooth and safe. The world's largest electoral exercise this time in India will witness deployment of 340,000 personnel from the various central armed police forces to ensure free and fair polling across the nation. The Election Commission has asked India's Ministry of Home Affairs to provide 3,400 companies of CAPFs or Central Armed Police Forces for deployment in a phased manner. About 340,000 paramilitary personnel will be deployed during the upcoming general elections and assembly polls in the Indian states of Arunachal Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha and Sikkim. Prior to this, 2019, general elections in India saw one of the largest deployment of paramilitary and security personnel. In a letter, the Home Ministry has urged the Chairman of Railway Board to make available adequate rolling stocks to ensure movement of forces to perform election duties. Measures by the ECI revolve around ensuring safety of polling stations, election officials and safety of voters from potential threats such as violence, intimidation or sabotage. Deploying law enforcement personnel and paramilitary forces to maintain law and order during the electoral process. Conducting risk assessments and implementing security measures in sensitive or conflict-prone areas. Electoral fraud prevention, such as preventing voter frauds like impersonation, multiple voting, bogus voting. Monitoring the distribution and storage of EVMs and voter lists to prevent tampering. The ECI is also responsible for implementing measures such as voter identification, indelible ink, and strict verification procedures to ensure the integrity of the voting process. Risk assessment is also a major step in the pre-election journey for the Election Commission of India. Cybersecurity is also kept in check to prevent misleading or threatening content. The ECI collaborates with cybersecurity agencies and experts to ward off any hacking attempts and enhance the resilience of election infrastructure. So how does the ECI manage various security challenges during elections in India? During general elections in India, The ECI adopts a multi-layered approach that combines preventive measures, law enforcement efforts, technology-enabled solutions, and stakeholder engagement to safeguard the integrity and credibility of the electoral process. Antara Sinha for DD India.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. Dow and S&P 500, Nasdaq end at records, extending rally. Afghanistan manages to hold India for a 0-0 draw in Group A fixture of the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers. Now good news for all chocolate lovers. You may soon be able to print your own 2D creations.
You said that Indian ethos and conceptualization of society, nation, state, governance, all these fundamental concepts of public life, you said that they are distinct and they are quite different and drawn from our traditions.
Our rise should be not just a photocopy of a Western or European nation, but India should rise as its own real, with its own real identity, which we call it Bharat.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Siddharth Bharadwaj. On to business now. Wall Street's three major stock indexes on Thursday registered record closing highs for the second day in a row after the Federal Reserve reassured investors about the prospects for a rate cuts this year, while chip stocks rallied after Micron Technology's upbeat forecast. The Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed 0.7%, while the S&P 500 gained 0.2% and the Nasdaq advanced 0.3%. The three major indexes hit fresh intraday record highs and the Dow neared its 40,000 level milestone. The US Department of Justice and 15 states sued Apple on Thursday as the government cracks down on big tech, alleging the iPhone maker monopolized the smartphone market, hurt smaller rivals and drove up prices. The Justice Department said that Apple charges as much as $1,599 for an iPhone and makes larger profits than any other in the industry. Officials also said that Apple charges various business partners, from software developers to credit card companies and even its rivals such as Google, behind the scenes in ways that ultimately raise prices for consumers and drive up Apple's profits. You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for sport. The 17th season of Indian Premier League will kick off today in the south city of Chennai. The opening encounter will see defending champions Chennai Super Kings taking on Royal Challengers Bangalore. Several top stars who missed the tournament last season are going to return. From the Indian team point of view, Jasprit Bumrah, Rishabh Pant and Shreyas Iyer are back in the franchise league after their respective forced injury breaks last year. IPL 2024 will also see the return of Mitchell Starc, who will be playing his first Indian Premier League season since 2015. So far, the schedule for only the first 21 matches has been released due to the upcoming 2024 India's general elections. The season is going to be the final season before the mega auctions and will also be a precursor to the T20 World Cup 2024, set to be played in June in the United States of America and the Caribbean islands. India and Afghanistan settled for a 0-0 draw after failing to turn their opportunities into goals in Group A fixture of the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers here on Thursday. It was end-to-end stuff in the first half, with India coming very close to scoring through Manveer Singh on two occasions, and the hosts too had its share of chances. However, most of them were half chances and goalkeepers of both teams were not tested enough. The result took India, still seeking their first win of the year, to 4 points and in second place in the four-team group after leaders Qatar beat Kuwait 3-0 on Thursday. India and Afghanistan play the return fixture in Guwahati on Tuesday. To bring in Easter, chocolate industries coming up with new ideas to woo buyers. Manufacturers are making 2D printing personalized logos, messages and even picture on some of the sweet treats. To craft the 2D messages, the chocolatiers print with food color on squares on round plaques of white chocolate. All right, and that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Prasar Bharati from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.